Leora Argamani, the mother of rescued hostage Noa Argamani, passed away this morning after a lengthy battle with brain cancer. She was 61 years old. Her death was announced by Sourasky Medical Center at around 6:30 a.m. Israel time. Her dying wish was to see her daughter before she died, a wish that was granted. Noa was captured by Hamas on October 7th from the Nova Music Festival alongside her boyfriend, Avinatan Ol. She was one of 4 hostages rescued last month by IDF Special Forces. She'd been a hostage for 246 days. Avinatan is still in the grips of Hamas. Blessed be her memory. And the IDF announced today that 2 soldiers were killed during overnight fighting in central Gaza. The fallen were named as Master Sergeant in the reserves Davan El-Hanan Knoller, aged 30 from Jerusalem, and Deputy Commander Eyal Avignon, aged 25 from Hod HaSharon. May their memories be for a blessing. And meanwhile, the IDF carried out fresh strikes in southern Gaza after ordering Gazan residents of Khan Yunis to flee their homes. The move followed yesterday's rocket barrage fired into southern Israel and comes amid the announced IDF shift to Phase 3 in the Gaza operation. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The order to evacuate parts of Khan Yunis came after a rocket barrage was fired toward communities in southern Israel from Hamas rocket launchers in the city. It was the largest barrage fired at Israeli communities in over 4 months. The IDF ordered Gazan residents of part of the city to flee their homes. Multiple IDF airstrikes were reported in and around Khan Yunis, with Hamas assets targeted and reports of multiple dead and wounded. The latest development comes amid a security assessment held by Prime Minister Netanyahu and top officers discussing the IDF's shift to Phase 3 in the Gaza operation, moving from large, intensive ground operations to repetitive raids wherever Hamas operatives emerge.
אנחנו מתקרבים לסיום שלב החיסול של צבא הטרור של חמאס. יהיה עוד המשך להכות בשערים שלו.
Limited ground operations are still underway, and many terror tunnels are being destroyed. The 98th Division is operating in Judea in Gaza City and eliminated numerous terrorists in close-quarter combat. Troops carried out raids in which they found weapons. The Air Force struck Hamas targets, eliminating about 20 terrorists and demolishing manufacturing facilities and warehouses. The end of Phase 2 is close to completion after almost 9 months. In the next phase of the war, regular IDF divisions will be deployed to hit Hamas targets in designated raids, mainly in northern Gaza, where forces have already been deployed multiple times in recent months. The transition to Phase 3 was delayed for several weeks, partly due to concerns in Israel about Hamas brigades in Rafah, and also due to strong American and Egyptian opposition. The IDF has now managed to evacuate most of the population from Rafah and the Philadelphia corridor northward, and continues operations to dismantle remaining Hamas operatives in the city. The transition to Phase 3, as explained by the IDF, will continue for many months, during which the IDF will continue to conduct raids based on intelligence with an emphasis on eliminating leaders and destroying infrastructure. It will also allow more IDF units to prepare for extensive military action in the north against Hezbollah.
And joining us now with more on the war in Gaza on day 270 is Brigadier General in the Reserves Amir Avivi, founder and CEO of the Israel Defense and Security Forum. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
So Amir, I've been asking this question of you for quite some time. Is Israel close to victory in Gaza?
Well, it's a long journey. I think it's close to destroy Hamas as a military entity, but it needs also to destroy Hamas as a governmental entity and take control of the humanitarian aid and the civil side. And there will be a lot of work. It will take years to really degrade the terror infrastructure dramatically all over the Gaza Strip. There are many, many scattered terrorists hiding in tunnels or among the people, and just like we see in Judea and Samaria, it's a long-term process. We'll have to raid again and again until the level of terror will be very, very low.
And you know, we're seeing renewed Hamas activity in Khan Yunis, an area that Israel has cleared already. You know, Israel clears one area, Hamas returns to that area again. How is this still possible?
Well, this is how it works. I mean, what happens is the IDF attacks, destroys many capabilities, destroys their ability to fight as units. They run away, they hide in tunnels, and then they try to regroup. And this process of regrouping again and again, as long as they have capabilities and weapons and some kind of command and control, they will try to do so. We need to really reach the leadership of Hamas and kill them. And we need to close very well the Egyptian border and continue destroying all their industrial capabilities in a way that won't enable them to regenerate. And again, this is a process. It's a long process, and we have to understand that this is the kind of warfare we're dealing with.
And so when is the time to start thinking of the day after, to announce the plan for Gaza? I mean, with the fighting seemingly winding down, switching to phase 3, what is Israel's long-term plan?
So Israel's long-term plan is, in the long term, to build local leaderships in the different cities based on the local clans, which anyway, the clans that run the municipalities, not have one government in Gaza, but in the different cities. Israel is not interested in managing everyday life from the civil side inside those cities, so they will want to restore the municipalities and give the control to local leaders. But in order to do so, we need to destroy Hamas first. If Hamas is around, the society will still be scared by Hamas, deterred by them, and will cooperate with them. So on one hand, we need to continue destroying Hamas. On the other hand, step by step, in areas that we already control, we can transfer to local leadership control. Having said that, it's a process also. It's a long process, and Israel, at the beginning at least, will have to really take control also for the civic issues inside Gaza.
And I want to turn to the north now, where the possibility of war is still very much looming. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Israel has effectively lost its sovereignty over the north. I mean, what's your analysis of this? Why is Israel tolerating thousands of missiles being fired into its territory every day?
Well, we decided from day one that we'll be on the defense on all fronts and on the offensive in Gaza. We said from the very beginning that we want to win first in Gaza and then deal with the north. We're getting close to this moment, a moment where the Israeli government will have to decide if they have a diplomatic solution to impose Resolution 1701 and to push Hezbollah diplomatically north of the Litani or not. And I assume that the chances of Hezbollah withdrawing diplomatically are very, very low. So if I have to guess what will happen, we are on our way to a war in the north.
On our way to a war in the north, and what would that look like?
It's going to be very, very, very intensive and short, because both sides won't have an interest to prolong it. Israel will attack fiercely Lebanon, all their infrastructure, Hezbollah, and also Israel will have to operate in South Lebanon and destroy Hezbollah in this area. The Hezbollah, of course, they will shoot Israeli cities, and it's going to be a very complicated war, but I don't think it's going to be like Gaza. It's not going to be long. At a certain point, both sides will want a ceasefire.
All right, Amir Avivi, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And a shooting attack was carried out this afternoon in the Har Bracha area of Samaria that left one man injured. Security forces were immediately dispatched to the scene, and the investigation is ongoing. And an IDF soldier was killed and another seriously hurt by a roadside bomb in Nul Shams in Samaria. The latest casualties come amid a string of terror incidents ramping up in Judea and Samaria. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz reports.
The fallen soldier was identified as Sergeant First Class Reserve Yehuda Ghetto, age 22, from Pardes Chana, Karkur. The two soldiers were inside a Panther armored personnel carrier when the bomb exploded. Ghetto is the driver, and the seriously wounded soldier is a commander in the Duvdevan Commando Unit. 2 Palestinians were killed during efforts to extract wounded soldiers. According to an initial IDF probe, the vehicle was waiting in an area of Nur Shams where explosive devices were not believed to have been planted. Other Duvdevan troops had disembarked from the APC to carry out operations on foot when the blast occurred. Armed terror groups in Judea and Samaria have been planting improvised explosive devices under roads to attack Israeli forces carrying out arrest raids. Recently in Jenin, a soldier was killed and 16 others wounded when Islamic Jihad operatives detonated bombs against army vehicles during a raid. Since October 7th, troops have arrested some 4,200 wanted Palestinians across the territories. During the same period, 21 Israelis, including security personnel, have been killed in Palestinian terror attacks in Israel and Judea and Samaria. Another 5 members of the security forces were killed in clashes with terror operatives, including the latest incident.
And tensions are heating up in Judea and Samaria after a string of terror incidents. Joining us now in the studio to discuss the situation on this front is Ishai Fleischer, the international spokesman of Hebron. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Leora. Thanks so much.
So we just had a terror attack today, and there is a feeling in Judea and Samaria that it will ultimately become a third front. I mean, what is your assessment on this? What is your feeling?
Well, you know, since the Oslo Accords, since 1993, we've given away lots of pieces of that land to a different sovereign, the Palestinian Authority. That sovereign turned out to be anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, jihadist, and really pro-terror. And so what we have right now is the fruition of all those years of miseducation, of brainwashing. And indeed, tensions are high because there's a war in Gaza. There might be a war in the north, as you're reporting. And it could be at any time that the Arabs of Judea and Samaria, who call themselves today Palestinians, may take the arms that they've already accrued and turn them against the Jews that live there. We have about 500,000 Jews that live in these parts, and we understand it to be the homeland and the heartland of the Jewish people, and we intend to stay there. So we indeed may have another front there.
You know, and you mentioned the arms. You know, there are many reports that Iranian arms are reaching into Judea and Samaria. Terrorists are receiving more sophisticated weapons. We see signs of that, you know, with these roadside bombs being made. Do you see any indications that there's more terror activity and that the terrorists are perhaps better armed recently?
You know, arms are, they don't need to be sophisticated to be deadly. They could be rock throwing. They could be small arms. Small arms kill. And so do M16s. So we don't need Stinger missiles to have a war over there because there's a civilian population that lives there. And so the terrorists they don't want to make a war. They want to terrorize. And so they can terrorize with simple weapons. And the IDF and the GSS has many times seized, you know, humongous caches of weapons. Most of the time it's pistols, but those things are deadly. And so there's only one way forward, and that is Israel to assert more sovereignty, more control back into the heartland of the Holy Land, and to police that area, and of course to continue to settle that land and to normalize Jewish presence there. The only way we could actually fight this is by asserting our strength and our sovereignty. If we pull back more, the terrorists will be happy that they've gained exactly what they want, which is less Israel, smaller Israel, and they're going to think that they can shrink us even more all the way to the end. We have to assert our right in the heartland.
You know, there have been many promises on that front in terms of improving the security fence in the area to improve really the security for the Jewish residents in the area. Is any progress being made there, do you feel?
Okay, so fences, in our perspective, are not the great panacea. In fact, we're on the wrong side of the fence, right? So it doesn't really help us that much because we're on the inside of Judea and Samaria. So it doesn't help us that much. The only thing that is going to help is continued assertion of sovereignty and clarity. Good news from the government is that the government of Israel just recognized 5 nascent Jewish communities, including Evyatar, Sde Ephraim, Givat Asaf, Cheletz, and Aduraim. These are nascent communities that have been building up, and they've recognized and legalized them. And also, big news out of the Regavim organization, they explained to me how the Israeli government has, for the first time, began to invalidate the Oslo Accords by asserting sovereignty over a piece of land that was in Area B, which was supposed to be a nature reserve. This is right between Gush Etzion and Har Hebron, basically in Judea, in southeast Judea, and the Palestinians, or the Palestinian Authority, that was supposed to keep it as a nature reserve, was indeed building a giant city there instead of the agreements. So finally, the Prime Minister of Israel, the Defense Minister, and Yuli Edelstein from the Defense Committee and Foreign Affairs Committee have now signed a warrant basically telling the IDF that they have to assert sovereignty over this place and to control it and to stop the building of this illegal city on this historic and heritage piece of land. So we see finally some steps from this supposedly right-wing government. We see it finally taking steps to abrogate and invalidate the Oslo Accords, which were already announced as invalid by the Palestinian Authority in 2009.
And, you know, I also want to ask you, there's been a lot of controversy over allowing Palestinian workers back into the settlements. Have they started working again? And if so, you know, how is that going?
Okay, I happen to be closely involved with this particular issue, and that is because my wife is one of the co-founders of a women's security forum in Judea called Beyadayim Shalanu. And we've been trying to block the access of PA workers into our towns. Now, these PA workers, Palestinian Authority Arabs, are not allowed into regular Israel, but they are allowed into the communities of Judea and Samaria where they could themselves be terrorists or carry out information gathering as they did in Gaza. We're trying to block that. And we're trying to send a signal. We're in a time of war. And if you're part of the jihadism, if you're pro-Hamas, you're not going to come work in our towns and gather that information. So there is a fight. On the other hand, there's the value of building. And building has slowed down because these Arabs are the main force of building in these towns, ironically, as it may seem. And so there's a fight. But our message to our government is there are alternatives to jihadists. Jihadists don't have to build our country. There could be Druzim, there could be pro-Israel Arabs, there could be Indians and Chinese, and we want you to open up that spigot and to help us get alternative workers who are pro-Israel and certainly not Israel haters and jihadists to help us build our towns.
And, you know, too many settlers have taken the law into their own hands. I mean, this is an issue that we've heard. It hurts Israel internationally, does little to solve the problem of terrorism. What do you think Israel should do about it?
Well, first thing, it's important to understand that that is the minority of minorities. Really, it happens very rarely, and Israeli police and Israeli army deal strictly within the confines of the law with people who are vigilantes to take the law into their own hands. That being said, and that's really what I believe, there's another side, which is, listen, this is the Middle East. You can only push a certain amount of people, a population so far. And if somebody's going to push you, that's just part of the reality of this region is that you're going to push back. And the folks that live in Judea and Samaria, they're the tough Jews, the brave Jews that hold on to our heartland until the state of Israel kind of figures out that this is one of the most important parts of the land of Israel that we have to hold on to. And so I'm not justifying vigilantism, but I understand where it comes from. In the absence of strong police, in allowing the PA, which is a jihadist organization, to be in control of large parts, and terror and murder being part of our reality there, yes, there's going to be people who push back.
All right, Ishai Fleischer, thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you, Lidar.
In medieval times, blood libels ignited pogroms that shattered our people. And now echoes of these lies persist in new blood libels. On college campuses, online, in the media, and halls of power, Jewish communities are facing this haunting echo of history once again. That's why we must speak out and make our voices heard. Today, there is only one organization that truly brings together Jewish communities from more than 100 countries and effectively elevates the voices of young leaders standing on the front lines in this battle for our survival: the World Jewish Congress.
And recent events highlight a disturbing global trend of anti-Israel and anti-Semitic attacks, raising concerns about the increasing normalization of such behavior. These incidents occurring in diverse settings underscore the urgency of addressing and combating hate speech and violence. ILTV's Ariella Lachiani has more details.
The University of Warwick Conservative Association faced backlash after recordings surfaced showing members singing and dancing to Erica, a Nazi anthem, during the annual Black Tie dinner. The song, associated with German Nazi forces during World War II, drew swift condemnation from the Union of Jewish Students. UJS criticised the students' actions as blatant and unhinged support for Nazism and called for decisive action from the university and the Conservative Party. The UWCA apologised, stating that the song was played briefly and was not part of the pre-planned music selection. However, the incident has prompted the university to review the material and engage with the Jewish Society to address the issue. In Brooklyn, a Jewish woman and her Catholic husband were assaulted by an Arabic-speaking family during a 5th grade graduation ceremony at PS 682. The altercation began when the Arabic-speaking family started shouting anti-Israel slogans, escalating into a physical attack. The husband was thrown to the ground, restrained and beaten, while the wife was knocked down and threatened. Their 16-year-old son was also punched in the face. Despite the apparent anti-Semitic nature of the attack, initial reluctance by the NYPD to classify it as a hate crime has drawn criticism. Eventually, the Hate Crimes Task Force was brought in to investigate. The incident has been described as one of the worst cases of anti-Semitism in a New York public school in recent times. And in North Carolina, 3 pro-Israel activists were attacked at an anarchist book fair held at the West Asheville Library. The activists, who were attending a seminar on strategic lessons from the Palestinian resistance, were confronted by participants after being identified as Zionists. The situation escalated, with one activist having her phone snatched and being punched, while another was repeatedly hit and put in a headlock. An 80-year-old veteran among them was also assaulted. The police arrested one individual involved in the attack, and further investigation is underway.
And in other news, Mass Challenge Israel, the largest equity-free accelerator program in the country, has announced the winners of its 2024 Early Stage Accelerator program. The finale, held in Jerusalem last night, showcased the resilience and innovation of entrepreneurs thriving despite the nation's challenges. 6 startups were chosen from a competitive group evaluated on their business strategies and global impact potential. The winners will participate in an all-expenses-paid investor roadshow to Boston and New York to expand their businesses. The 2024 Mass Challenge Israel winners were Bob Food Tech, a media recycling company for cultured meat and seafood aimed at cutting costs; Commune, an AI-based real-time medical translator for inclusive healthcare; EndoCure, a robotic ultrasound for endometriosis lesion mapping and treatment; Pulse Music, an AI-powered interactive music for gamers; Surgi AI, which makes a tissue track platform for precise surgical navigation; and TreeTube, a company that is industrializing urban tree plantations without harming infrastructure. Good luck to these Israeli companies. And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Clear skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 22 degrees Celsius or 71 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, partly cloudy skies are expected alongside warm temperatures set to reach highs of around 34 degrees Celsius or 94 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channels, subscribe to our ILTV newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Leora Argamani. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.